Hello, good people, and welcome back to Unit 5. This is our second lesson of Unit 5, and it will be split into two parts. The first part is how to pay money, and the second part is budgeting, okay? So let's go ahead and dig right on into it with part 1, how to pay money. You said you weren't going to spend any more money. Look at you, broke and sad. Don't do that, okay? Don't be broke and sad at the same time. If you're going to be broke, you better be happy about it. All right, so here's the thing. There are 4 major types of payment. So anybody can spend money. All right, but the question here is, can you spend it wisely so you don't wind up with negative $75 in your bank account by the end of the month every single month? Because if you continue to do that, you wind up in continual debt. All right, so the 4 major types of payment. The first one is cash. The second one is checks. The third one is credit cards. And the fourth one is online payments. So please make sure you're listening. The first one is cash. Please write cash for number 1. Please write checks for number 2. Credit cards for number 3. And online payments for number 4. Okay, so all 4 of these can be used in different ways. The first one being cash is the oldest and most accessible form of payment. Okay, so this is the one that everyone can use regardless of how financially stable or unstable you are. If you cannot get into a bank account and you don't have access to checks or debit or credit cards, you always have access to cash. There are a lot of talks here recently in major cities about whether or not they should go cashless and not require businesses to accept cash as legal tender, but that's what it's formally known as, legal tender. So if you look on an actual dollar, it says like legal tender Federal Reserve note. All right, so from the Federal Reserve, which is our money flow agency within the Department of the Treasury, it is printed at the U.S. Mint, and from the Federal Reserve, they send out to specific banks certain amounts of money that is printed, because if you just print more money, then it loses its value over time if you print an excessive amount. So we have to be mindful as a country of how much cash we are printing and how many coins we're stamping. So, for example, when you go to the bank, you pretty much never get a wrinkled old dollar bill. If you ever ask for cash from the bank and they give it to you in an envelope, it's basically all nice, crispy, never been folded. It's nice and straight. There's no wrinkles. It smells new. So they typically give you brand new money. Now, if you have like nasty older bills, they will trade that out for you. We'll get into that in just a second. So the Secret Service is formed, getting back to our cash bullets over here. The Secret Service was formed to stop counterfeiters who would produce fake cash and flood it into the economy in the North. So Southern soldiers, or Confederate soldiers, I should say, would travel up to the North with a whole bunch of fake bills and just pay for stuff with fake money. And in those days, in the 1860s, it was much more difficult to spot counterfeit money than it is today. So there are a lot of things that are done to prevent counterfeiting. So how long is the lifespan of paper money? All right, so if you have $1 bill, how long does it stay like floating around before a bank ends up getting it and trades it in as like, this dollar bill is almost torn in half, it has to go. Typically a $1 bill is only around for like 6 years-ish. The average dollar bill has a lifespan of 2 years. Less than 2 years before it is destroyed and replaced. So the amount of $1 bills or 5s or 10s or 20s or 50s or 100s that are floating around gets kept track of by the Federal Reserve. And if there are crappy bills, if they're torn, if they're gross, the bank, when they receive them, will take them, trade them for the Federal Reserve Bank for a new dollar bill. The old ones, we're going to skip that for now. The old ones will travel around back to the Federal Reserve Bank and will be, if it's unfit, if they're like, this has got to go, they will shred them and burn them. So that's that. All right. Let's see. Yeah, so they're like, listen, I need you to print me some more. There's a Bureau of Engraving and Printing. There are literally people whose job it is to make sure that all of the stamps for coins are correct and all of the dollar bills are like nice and crispy and have like proper micro printing so that you can't counterfeit them easily. Let's get over to checks. What are they? First of all, they are a paper form of payment that's usually issued through a bank or a credit union. So typically speaking, this is what a check looks like. There will be the bank name, and your address on a check. So you've got to be careful as to who receives a check, and you have to be absolutely certain that they get your check and they cash it. Okay, so let's go over the parts of it. In the top right-hand corner, if you are writing this, please make sure to circle it. If you are typing this, please make sure to highlight, put a box around it, put a comment on your notes, something, okay? The top right-hand corner, these 4 digits, this is the check number. So typically speaking, when a bank issues you a check, they issue you like 50 at a time, and they will all have a 5-digit or a 4-digit number, and the last 2 will count like 01 all the way through 50. Then the next set that you get from the bank will be 51 through 100 or whatever. They're always different. So if you know what the check number is that you give, like let's say, for example, you cut a check for your rent to your landlord, and your landlord's like, well, I received a check and it was number 5721, and you're like, the number that I wrote to you was 5719. You got to be sure that you know what this is and where it is at all times. Okay, so this date obviously is where the date goes. This pay to the order of line is the business or the person that you're making the check out to. So before we get into how much money you're actually making it out for, or how you sign it, we have to figure out who we're giving this money to, because essentially what you're doing is substituting one piece of paper for all the cash you could have given them instead. So you pay to the order of the person or the business, and then you have to write it out in numbers. So this is the box where the numbers go. So make sure you make yourself a note of this, where all the numbers live. And then right here, you have to write out each individual word. So let's say you have a check for $75.22. You literally write the word 70-5 and make a little and sign. And any change that you have has to be done as a fraction. So let's say you have, I don't even know what I said, 16 cents. So let's say you say 16/100, okay? So you have to write out the actual words. So here's the number box, and see how it says dollars right here? You have to write out in a similar fashion so that it's the actual written words, okay? And remember, change is a fraction, so change has to be done in a fraction. So the memo line is what it's for. So if you forget what you're writing checks for, or you have a bad short-term memory, or you just want to be sure that you know what each individual check is going to, you write what it is in the memo. So groceries, September rent, whatever it is. And then you sign over here on this line. Don't print it. Sign it in cursive, for crying out loud, okay? Be grown about this. All right, so go ahead and sign it over here. If you are writing this down, make sure you sign it. I will comment on your signatures when you turn these into me later. All right, so what happens if you don't end up having as much money in the bank as you wrote the check out for? That's stressful. That's called bouncing a check. So if you wrote the check for $178.22 and you only had $100 in your bank account, you just bounced the check because you asked the bank to take more out than what you had in the bank. Okay, so don't do that. So if the check amount is larger than what you actually have in the account to back it up, you're gonna end up bouncing a check. Now, if this happens to you, if somebody writes you a check and they've bounced it, not only does that person have to pay a bounced check fee, they still have to pay you what they owe you. Okay. And what are the consequences of this? This can negatively impact your credit score, and it stays on your credit report for 5 years. Don't do this. Before you write a check left and right, go home, go on your computer, figure out whether or not you have enough money to back it up. Okay? And what's a deposit slip? A paper record or receipt of money that flows into an account. All right? So your name is here. Typically speaking, if you get one of these directly from a bank, it'll have the bank name. A lot of times they won't give you a deposit slip that has your name on it. They'll just give you a blank one and you can fill it out. This isn't required at banks these days, typically speaking, but just in case, we need you to know how to do it, okay? So here's the deal. If you have, let's say you have $100 cash and a check to deposit into the bank, you are going to see how it says cash up here on the top line and it's checked off. You put 100 and 00 here. And let's say your check is for $75.22. You would put 7522. And if you don't want any cash back, you don't subtract anything here. All of these lines you add together for your subtotal. And if you want some cash back, you have to subtract that because cash goes into your hand. All right, and everything else goes into the bank. All right, so let's say you wanted $10 back. You'd have $175.22 and then minus $10 in cash. So you'd have $165.22 going into the bank and $10 into your hand. Okay, so for the subtotal, let's put add. For less cash received, let's put minus. Okay, and so this is the total down here, this big box that will go into the bank. All right, number 3 is credit cards. All of this is review, fee for borrowing money. You know what a rewards program is. Remember, in order to qualify to have a credit card, you have to be 18 to apply for one, but you could be a little younger with a cosigner if you want. Remember, your networks, just straight up networks, are Visa and MasterCard because the bank issues the card, but Visa and MasterCard manage the actual accounts. Okay, issuer and networks are Discover and Amex. They'll send you the card. They are in charge of all of your debt, okay? And you have to apply and get approval in order to receive one. All right, number 4 is electronic payments. For auto drafts, you've got to check these. Make sure if you have a bill that is automatically snatched out of your bank account every month, that you check that it's the actual amount owed. If you don't, you may end up paying too much money for something, or if they give you a bill that's wrong and you don't advocate for yourself, you're not going to get your money back. All right, keep track of your bank statements. If you have them emailed to you, make sure you file them away. Make sure you're not out here just like deleting all of the records of what is happening in your bank account. If you get paper bank accounts, make sure to file them, keep them. Do not shred them, don't throw them away. If you do foolishly throw them away, shred them first, okay? Make sure you self-advocate with businesses. If you know good and well that Suddenlink was not supposed to have charged you $285 for a random equipment fee, this happened to me in real life, call them and tell them this. Get them to refund your money. If you didn't buy a particular thing from Amazon and they charged you for it anyway, call Amazon. All right, do not be afraid to get on the phone and self-advocate. If you want to email and self-advocate, that's fine too. But make sure you are standing up for yourself. This is your money. You have got to manage it. Okay, please make sure you keep documentation of this. All right, if you email or if you call, write it down. Ask for the name of the person that you're speaking to in customer service. So when someone asks you like, oh, well, who told you that? Brian from customer service on September the 12th at 9 a.m. or whatever. Okay. So what other fees might you incur inside of an online payment? Convenience fees on top of that. So a lot of times there is a convenience fee, like if you pay someone through PayPal. This has not happened through Venmo or Cash App, but if you use PayPal to pay people instead of paying them cash, you'll have to pay like an 85-cent fee to do this. Shipping fees on top of your payments, or subscription. So if you don't end up canceling, like start so-and-so for free, and you don't end up canceling that subscription, you're going to end up paying for it. All right, make sure you read the fine print. All right, if this little deal is like, try Disney Plus for free for 7 days, what happens at the end of the 7 days? What happens if you were like, oh shoot, I didn't realize that was going to charge me $36 for the month? Well, you're out $36. Too bad, so sad. Okay, make sure you read the fine print. Cancel the subscriptions. Don't cancel the bills. Because then you'll wind up in trouble. All right, and that has been part 1.